For minutes after takeoff, the biggest passenger aircraft ever built was tearing itself apart. On the 4th of November, 2010, Qantas Flight 32 lifted off from Singapore for Sydney. On board were 469 people and an Airbus A380, the largest airliner in the world. Climbing through 7,000 feet, the crew heard two deep bangs. The number 2 engine had not simply failed. It had exploded. A disc inside the engine, spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, had shattered. Pieces of it left the engine like shrapnel, cutting through the wing, through fuel tanks, through wiring, and out the other side. On the ground below, on the island of Batam, people picked up chunks of a Qantas engine from their streets. In the cockpit, the warnings began. Not 1, not 10. The aircraft systems generated more than 120 separate failure messages, and they kept coming. Fuel was leaking from both wings. 2 hydraulic systems were damaged. The left wing's flight controls were degraded. The brakes were compromised. Engine number 1 could no longer be controlled properly, and the landing gear could not be raised. The A380 was designed so that no single failure could threaten it. This was not a single failure. This was hundreds of them at once. The captain that day was Richard de Crespigny. He had 4 other pilots on the flight deck, a rare combination because 2 of them were there to check his own performance. That accident of scheduling became one of the reasons the flight ended the way it did. For nearly 2 hours, the crew flew a giant, wounded aircraft in a holding pattern over the sea. They did not rush. They worked through the failures one at a time, deciding what the aircraft could still do, rather than mourning what it had lost. De Crespigny later described a decision that changed everything. Instead of counting what was broken, he chose to count what still worked. The wings still had lift. The aircraft still had thrust. It was still flying. Then came the landing problem. The A380 was far too heavy to land safely, and they could not dump fuel because the fuel system was damaged. They would have to put a 440-ton aircraft onto the runway at Singapore, faster than it should ever touch down, with damaged brakes and no way to reverse thrust on one side. The crew calculated it would take almost every meter of Changi's runway. There would be no second attempt. They flew the approach with the aircraft trimmed and imperfect, holding it steady all the way down. The A380 touched the runway and stopped with roughly 150 meters of concrete remaining. It was down. It was intact. And every one of the 469 people on board was alive. But it was not over. Fuel was still pouring from the left wing onto hot brakes. Engine number 1 refused to shut down. The crew could not turn it off, and it kept running for hours after landing, until emergency crews finally drowned it with foam. Passengers were held on board until the fire risk was controlled, then walked away from an aircraft that would need months of repair. The investigation found the cause deep inside the engine. An oil pipe manufactured with a wall thinner than the design required. That tiny error let oil leak, catch fire, and weaken the disc until it burst. The finding grounded engines and changed manufacturing checks across the industry. Qantas 32 is studied today not because the aircraft failed, but because the people did not. 5 pilots, 1 broken aircraft, and 120 failures, and not 1 life lost.